In this video, you'll learn how to work the invisible provisional cast-on. To work the invisible provisional cast-on, you'll need your knitting needles, your working yarn, which for me is this cream yarn, and some smooth waste yarn that won't felt or pill. The waste yarn should be at least double the length of the cast-on edge. Holding the waste yarn and the project yarn together, create a slip knot. And place it on one of your needles. The slip knot does not count as a stitch cast on. Holding the needle in the right hand and both strands in the left hand, insert the left thumb and index finger between the strands and spread them apart so that the waste yarn is around the thumb and the project yarn is around the index finger. Use the right index finger to hold the slip knot in place on the needle. This is the starting position. Bring the needle forward and under the waste yarn, and then over the working yarn. Bring the needle behind the working yarn and underneath both strands back to the starting position. This creates a stitch on the needle that looks like a knit stitch. Bring the needle behind and under the working yarn and then up between the strands. This creates a stitch on the needle that looks like a yarn over. Let's go over that twice more. Bring the needle forward and under the waste yarn, and then over the working yarn. Bring the needle behind the working yarn and underneath both strands, all the way to the front of the work, to the starting position. Bring the needle behind and under the working yarn, and up in between the strands. Let's go over that one more time. Bring the needle forward and under the waste yarn, then over the working yarn. Bring the needle behind the working yarn and underneath both strands back to the starting position. Bring the needle behind and under the working yarn, and then up between the strands. Repeat alternating, creating what look like knits and yarn overs until the required number of stitches are cast on. You'll notice that if you ended with a yarn over especially, that the yarn on the end here isn't anchored by the waste yarn. So when we turn our work to work the next row, there's not really any way that we can work into this first stitch. To anchor the last stitch before working the next row, turn your work and wrap the waste yarn around the last stitch and hold that in the left fingers so that you can work this next row. Once you've completed your first row, you can drop the slip knot from the needle. You won't need it until you pick up the stitches later. Once your project has been worked, check out how to pick up stitches and remove the waste yarn from the cast-on edge in the video linked above. If you liked this video, like and subscribe, and if you would like new videos delivered directly to your inbox, you can sign up at knit.tips/news.